name's Jim Toomey. I'm the town moderator, and the purpose of this meeting is just to go over the warrant for special town meeting, which is going to be held next Tuesday, October 26th at 7 p.m. at the high school gymnasium. We expect that all people will wear masks for the meeting, and we will have appropriate setup in terms of space in the auditorium that addresses concerns about staying healthy. I've been asked to just give a brief overview of the process in this meeting involved in the town meeting. So the first thing I want to know is that the advisory committee puts out this booklet. The advisory committee goes through each and every article and analyzes it, talks to the necessary people involved, does the necessary research, and makes a recommendation to town meeting, which can be accepted or not. This booklet contains a good explanation of each and every warrant article, what's involved, and what their recommendation is. So I would highly recommend that folks read this. It's on the town website, both under the advisory, and is it in the town clerks as well?
It's on the town website. I don't think it's on my page.
Okay.
It's on the town website.
Go to the advisory committee page on the town website, and it's available there. It also is a good explanation of the town meeting procedure in the town clerk's website, on the town clerk's page. If you go there and click on town meeting, there is a brief one-page explanation, and then there's also one from the state secretary of state outlining in more detail what goes on. Very briefly, the process of town meeting is governed by the warrant. The warrant sets out the subjects to be voted upon, to be considered at the meeting. If something is not in the warrant, it can't be considered at the town meeting. And the discussion at town meeting has to be limited to the items that are in the warrant. What you have in the warrant is called a series of articles. The article sets forth the subject matter and possible action that might be taken on that subject matter. It is up to a member of the meeting to make a motion under the article, which is what is actually voted upon. The motion does not have to be word for word what's in the article. It simply has to be within the scope, within the subject matter that is presented by the article. So, and sometimes it requires a judgment call. And kind of the standard I use on that is if I had picked up the warrant and thought that a particular subject matter was going to be presented to the town meeting, and the motion that is presented gets off of that subject matter, and now we have a different subject before the town meeting than what was put there by the article. In that situation, I'd have to rule that the subject matter is not what's contained in the article. It's what they call beyond the scope of the article, and it could not go before the town meeting. So those are the guidelines that we use, and again, the rule of thumb I use. If I was looking at the warrant, sitting in my house and saying, I'm not concerned about what could happen on this subject matter, and then all of a sudden there's a different subject matter that I wasn't aware of as I sit at home, then I can't let that go before the meeting. The moral of the story is everybody should come to town meeting, but that doesn't happen obviously. Those are the basic issues. Again, I commend the advisory booklet. Everybody takes a look at that. They'll be well prepared. They'll know what the issues are and be ready to go before the meeting. Just want to take a minute and explain to people that a good deal of preparation. The town clerk's office is involved, selectman office is involved, the town administrator's office is involved, planning board is involved, school committee is involved. In this case, the community preservation committee is involved. There's a lot of work that goes into this to prep for this meeting. So people should be aware that it isn't something that just is picked up at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night. That a lot of work has gone into this. people understand that and are respectful. Next, the last thing is, if there are questions on procedures at the meeting, I don't want people to get bogged down in, I have to call a point of order, or don't get bogged down in the language. If someone has a question, if you're concerned or don't understand what the procedure is, you don't understand what's happening, please just go to a mic and ask that be explained. There's no real magic formula to this. The only reason that we get into some of this parliamentary procedure is to make sure that there's an orderly way about doing our business and that we get it done in a way that we can keep track of, follows the legal requirements, and gets the town's business done. So to the extent anyone has a question or an issue, they should feel free to stand up and ask a question, and we'll get them an answer if it's appropriate. If someone has an issue before town meeting, I have an email. It's called scitmod, scitmod@gmail.com. Please get the question to me before the meeting. We'll do our best to get things resolved so that we don't have to deal with things on the fly at the last minute. I think that's basically the issues that we have in terms of the process. Let's go now to the warrant, and the first issue we're going to have is something we've done for the last 4 or 5 years now in town, is we have a proposed consent agenda. The way that works is the Board of Selectmen has looked at the warrant articles and the issues that appear to be relatively routine. It's a matter of straightening out balances, moving things from one account to the other, some routine acceptance of statutes. And based on these appearing to be pretty routine, we've grouped together the what's known as a consent agenda. In this case, there are 5 articles: unpaid bills for prior year, fiscal year, reconciliation of budgets, reserve transfers to the various departments, and 2 local option statutes which would allow the deferral of water and sewer charges for those who are eligible on paying them. The process will be, I will read each of the subject matter of each of those articles. If someone is, any member of the meeting is concerned about one of the issues, one of those articles, and would like to have a discussion on those items, we will take that article out, we'll hold it for separate discussion along with the other articles, and it's just a matter of yelling hold, saying hold, as we go through the 5 articles. With the articles that aren't held, we will then have a 2/3 vote. 2/3 vote is required in order to pass the consent agenda, and then those items will be passed. The individual motion for each item is listed in the advisory committee book, and also in the consent agenda at the special town meeting, which is Appendix A to the advisory committee report. And that's all spelled out there, and you can see exactly what the motions are and what's going on. Then we move to the remaining articles, assuming the consent agenda is passed. The next article will be Article 4, which is the initial planning for renovations to the Hadley School. That's a school committee article. I will turn to the school committee and ask that they make a presentation explaining the article and what it would do and the reasons for that article. One thing I wanted to make sure of, Nancy, is I looked at it. All of that money is transferred. There's no issue of any borrowing or anything, so we prefer the majority vote on that. Okay. That doesn't always happen. You get that kind of money through transfers. Anything, Superintendent, we should know about that on the Hadley?
No, it's pretty well articulated and we have this.
Okay.
Thank you.
The gallery's been pretty well vetted, and that's not going to be controversial.
Agreed.
Good.
But you never know. Let's wait.
The next item we'll go through is the capital improvement plan. That's Article 5. There are a number of sub-articles there. I will go through and read the subject matter of each of the sub-articles. If someone wants to hold one of those for discussion, we'll pull that out. We'll vote for the rest of the articles, then we'll go to that individual one if necessary. Otherwise, we'll vote them all in one vote. And that will require a 2/3 vote. Next item is community preservation. Again, what I will do, since it's pretty clear that there's going to be a discussion on at least one of the items, is I'll go through and read the subject matter of each. We'll hold on any that someone in the audience asks for hold on. We will then get the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee on those issues, which is stated in the article as it stands. Just briefly, that you have a positive recommendation, Dan, on those, and we'll vote those as a group. The ones that are held, we'll go through, we'll ask for a presentation first from the Community Preservation Committee on what their recommendation is to the town. That recommendation is statutorily required, and the town meeting cannot take action on community preservation funds unless there is a underlying recommendation from the Community Preservation Committee to do that. So we're within the limits of what the Community Preservation Committee recommends. And then I guess at least Board Street would be one that we think there might be some discussion
I think
on.
there'll be two, at least two. The baseball field, I think, is going to come up for discussion.
Okay.
And certainly the Border Street.
I don't know, I had heard some talk about an alternative motions being made under the community preservation. Anyone hearing? Okay, good. Again, we're within the strictures of the Community Preservation Act and the recommendations that the Community Preservation Committee made. So there's no adding to that or changing that. It's either an accept or reject type situation. And then Article 9 is, master plan. What's the planning board's pleasure on the master plan? Do we want to make a quick presentation? We're going to be in about the third inning of the World Series at that point.
It'll probably just be a brief one-sentence type thing that the planning board has voted to accept the master plan, and although endorsement's not required by town meeting, it would go a long way towards good planning for the future, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's important to let them know that this is we're asking for the town's advice on this as opposed to
Right.
approve.
Right.
It is the master plan, no matter what
Right.
town meeting
So
does.
we'll have just a one-sentence statement.
Good. And then the last two articles are on marijuana. One was a special legislation, which I think everyone has agreed is not necessary. I'm not sure if there's going to be an alternate article. I've been in touch with the proponents of, and we just haven't connected yet, but I'm sure we will before the town meeting. That also goes for the last article, which is the zoning. Any updates on that in terms of what the...
Well, we completed the public hearing on the advice of town council, and the planning board did not vote to support it as written. Our understanding is that they're going to get up and indefinitely postpone it. We're having very poor luck getting them to respond as well, but I have already given them several emails saying we want to sit down. I proposed a date to try to come up with an article for the spring town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard there's a consensus, it seems to make sense to me.
Right.
Let's take a fresh look at this, plenty of lead time up in the annual town meeting, and coordinate the general bylaw issue with the zoning bylaw issues and any other issues that might come up.
The proponent expressed the same to the advisory committee. They were going to indefinitely postpone our full vote.
Okay. I think that's it. Anything else?
Couple questions.
Yeah.
Does anybody need easels? You good? PowerPoint? Any of that? No? Okay. And that's it then. I have to fix your book.
I don't know if it's a question or a suggestion, but last year, the acoustics were really bad, and I don't know if they've done anything to improve that.
Kathy and I talked about that today. We're going to work with the sound. So I'm going to get there early. And if there are dead spots, we're going to try and identify them. I think it's always been a tough room. And it's always, but I think particularly in that front area, and we talked about it before, and Kathy, I know, has been in touch with the sound.
Yeah, John.
We hire someone who does that, and they have a certain amount of control over the volume at different mics. One of the issues we've identified is people not speaking into the microphone.
They're either
You
too
know,
close.
they want to look at something they have beside of them, or and I'm guilty of that myself. So I think we're going to emphasize that. Kathy and I are going to get really close to the sound. If we can identify a dead spot, we'll do that to make sure that people can move around. I know in the past, before I was moderator at Bennett meetings, where moderators said, if you can't hear where you're sitting, move in this direction or that direction. We may have to do something.
Well, we still have the headsets for the hearing impaired as well. Over where John sits, there's, I want to say there's at least 4 to 8 of them, I can't remember. Yeah, and you could just,
Well, I know that was a concern. We talked about that today.
If it's all right with you, I'm going to bring up, I'm very hard of hearing, and I had a real hard time last year.
I did too, by the way.
I'm going to bring up my co-chair to be my translator, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So, just so you know ahead of time.
Yeah, no, that's, I had the same issue.
They were, last year, if you were underneath the speaker, it was pretty good. But if you started moving out in the room, then you started getting all the echo and, very difficult to hear in the middle of the room, too.
I appreciate that. You weren't the only one who commented on that after the last meeting, so we tried to address it.
sometimes I can't.
Yeah, I think last meeting, we were sitting in a different configuration, which was even worse.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So my
yes.
hope is we're going back to
Yeah.
the one, because I don't have a hearing problem, I couldn't hear half of it. I think that's why the meeting went as quickly as it did,
Yeah.
because no one could hear anything.
Yeah, we're at the regular setup, just less.
Well, the meeting
Yeah.
did go faster.
Maybe that's
Well,
something to.
that's one way.
Just kidding, just kidding. Anything else?
So are we expecting new motions from the petitioners on these articles? Because these are draft motions.
Well,
Maybe draft
in
motion.
terms of the board street, that's pretty much limited to what's in the book. It's not much.
No, I mean for the petition articles.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I sent an email out, I asked them to phone me. Got a week to go, so
Mhm.
they're probably still processing what we've done.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.